So yesterday I made a post on Reddit giving my interpretation of the ending to the Ring City DLC, and I really was not expecting the attention that post eventually got. Last I seen it was at over 1,000 upvotes, and it's just crazy the response it's been getting. There's been lots of positives, some negatives, and more so people just still have a lot of questions, so I wanted to make a video retouching on my points and just touching on some of the questions people have, because there were a lot of interesting ones that even I was a little bit stumped for. A lot of the confusion I am seeing within the community is surrounding the identity of Gael. Who is he? Why is he the final boss? Why do we not meet him in the Ring City as an NPC earlier? And the short answer to Gael's identity is that he first shows up in the Cleansing Church at the beginning of the Ashes of Ariandel DLC. He is a slave knight and he wants to help the woman complete her painting. In order to do so, she needs to first see flame and then she needs the pigment of the Dark Soul. Upon agreeing to help Gael on this mission, he presents to us a scrap of the Ariandel painting. Upon touching it, we get sucked into the world, and it is our new task now to show his lady Flame so she can get painting. Now, given the fact that while we are within the painted world, Gael does not make an appearance in the physical form. He can be summoned to fight the final boss, but physically he's not there, it's a phantom. So I would presume that while we are within the painting taking care of business there, Gael has already left to look for the Dark Soul in the Ring City. This is reinforced at the end of the Ashes of Ariandel DLC when the painter wonders if Gael has found the Dark Soul yet. And just to add on that, the two bonfires that you use to access the Ring City DLC, they have red cloth wrapped around the top of the coiled sword. So it's kind of like Gael helping you out, saying, hey, come this way. Within the Ring City DLC, Gael's phantom and red cloth will often work as a signpost for which direction you need to be traveling in. These are all very important points to answering a question that a lot of people have. Why do we not meet Gael in the physical form within the Ring City DLC? And the answer to that is, he got a head start, he's ahead of us. And I don't mean he got a couple hours head start so we might catch up with him. I think Gael has been gone for a very, very long time. In fact, I think while we are entering the DLC, Gael has already become a corrupted monstrosity by the Dark Soul. The messages that Gael has left for us, in the early stages of the DLC even, have a red aura coming from them. And if you look closely, you can actually see skulls within the aura. These are the same red skulls we see in the final fight against Gael when he has become corrupted by the Dark Soul after a very long period of time has passed. I know a lot of people might be upset that they didn't get to meet Gael on their journey through the Ring City, but I hope this maybe sways some people over to understanding why we don't meet him. So what exactly was Gael doing while we were playing through the Ring City, and why is he the final boss? Gael's task was to bring a pigment of the Dark Soul back to the painter. But finding the Dark Soul isn't as easy as it sounds, because it is not just one entity. See, when the Dark Soul was first found by the furtive pygmy many years ago, he didn't keep it for himself, he split it and shared it with his fellow men. So initially Gael didn't need the entire Dark Soul, he just needed its pigment, he needed some of its blood. So he travelled to the home of the pygmies, which is the Ring City. He knew that the pygmies there had descended from the Dark Soul, so he went to request some of their blood. Now, either the pygmies just outright refused this request, or they just didn't have any blood to give to him. Either way, Gael did not receive any blood of the Dark Soul by request. So instead he resorted to more drastic measures. Gael was going to put the Dark Soul back together again, and this involved killing all of the pygmies and consuming them to inherit their fragment of the Dark Soul. This is why in the opening cutscene of the boss fight we see him eating a pygmy. He is absorbing their fragment of the Dark Soul. But before setting out to reassemble the Dark Soul, Gael knew that it would be an endless journey. He knew that he would probably fall corrupt to the power of the Dark Soul, and he knew that he would not make it back home to deliver the pigment to the painter. So Gael was kind of banking on you to come one day and to kill him, to take the pigment of the Dark Soul and bring it back to the painter. This is why he has guided you through different areas of the DLC. He wants you to come to him someday, put him out of his misery, and complete his task of delivering the pigment of the Dark Soul back to the painter. But before we meet Gael in the final battle, we must wake up the sleeping Princess Filianor, who turns out to be another daughter of Gwyn. Yeah, there's another one apparently. So as per usual, the Ashen one touches something that they probably shouldn't. This time it turns out to be an egg, which causes it to crumble to pieces, and that causes the princess to awaken. Perhaps the egg is representative of the world state. Before we even got there, it was already falling apart and rotten on the inside. After awakening the princess, the screen fades to white, and when it comes back we see that she is dead and rotten, and that the entire world has just crumbled to ash. So there has been a massive leap forward in time to the end of the world, and I'm not quite sure if the egg controls time, if the princess's sleep controls time. I'm not quite sure. The fact that the egg was already kind of broken, it seems to me that maybe that's why time is convoluted in the world of Dark Souls, so maybe it's the egg that ultimately controls time somehow. After this, when you enter the Ashen Wasteland and fight Gael, he seems kind of surprised to see that you are still alive, and to me that kind of cements the fact that a lot of time has passed, and that what we just saw was a time leap and not just an illusion.
What? Still here?
Now, just because you fight Gael, it does not mean that there is animosity between the Ashen One and Gael. It is purely because he has fallen corrupt and he just can't help himself. If anything, you are an old friend who is just upholding their end of the bargain when you agreed to help Gael all the way back in the Cleansing Church. And this is actually not unlike the relationship that Sigurd has with Yorm. And this is why Gael is the final boss. He did the impossible. He travelled to the end of the world. He travelled to the end of time for countless years, collecting every last fragment of the Dark Soul. He knew his role. He knew that he would not be the one to deliver the pigment back to the painter. He knew that he was just playing the role as the collector. He was a temporary vessel, because he knew that one day you would show up, that you were the true deliverer of the pigment, and maybe even you are the rightful heir to possess the Dark Soul. After you kill Gael, it's just you, all by yourself at the end of the world. And in your possession you have arguably the most powerful soul of all, but nobody is alive to bear witness to it. Just like the furtive pygmy, you are so easily forgotten too.